think we're ready to go. Afternoon, Cyrilia.
Hi.
Thank you so much for welcoming me to Temple Chambers and to having this conversation. I feel so privileged and honoured to be having this conversation with you. There's so much about your history, about what you've done in the law profession, who you are from Peckham to partner, that I think loads of people would love to understand and learn about. We know each other because I'm involved in a voluntary organisation called the Federation of Ethnic Minority Healthcare Organisations, FEMHO. We are core participants in the COVID inquiry, and you are lead of our legal counsel. You've been involved in a number of inquiries, the infected blood inquiry, undercover police inquiry, the Grenfell inquiry. You're an amazing legal mind, and it's just an honour to have this conversation. So perhaps a brief introduction about yourself.
Sure. So I'm Cyrilia Davis-Knight, as you know. I am a partner here at Saunders Law, and I head up the public inquiries team. I do mainly actions against the police and state, which means essentially I sue the government and government agencies for a living. That can include and not limited to when there's a death in custody, or where the state is involved. I can do an inquest there. If someone's stopped and searched and they want to bring a challenge as to the grounds for that stop and search, usually there's a discrimination aspect to it. I can be involved in that. And also it could be if there is force used during an unlawful arrest or a police raid on someone's home, I can be involved in that in terms of civil actions. I also do inquiries, as you said, so things like Grenfell, which we all know, and COVID that we're involved in together.
There's a lot that you help people out with in times of challenge with or against the state. What got you into that field to begin with? And maybe let's start with what got you into law.
Sure.
to begin with.
So I've always wanted to become a lawyer, but for different reasons to your conventional lawyer, I think. I grew up in the 80s in Bermondsey, when it was a very white area to be in. So coming from a very black African background, we were very much so the minority. And we were made to feel as such at times. I can't say personally that I had any experiences of that, but I definitely witnessed lots of examples of black people being made to feel different, black people being discriminated against, and black people being criminalised because of the colour of their skin. So I was always clear that I wanted to be involved in bringing about change and giving a voice to people who are voiceless, and I thought law was a good mechanism to do that. So I remember initially I wanted to go into employment law because there were discrimination issues. I watched my parents who came from Africa as young students and had to rebuild and start again when they came because they couldn't get a job in their industry that they were qualified in some aspects overqualified. So there was always that in the back of my mind. And then I got my first job my first job that I had at the time. There were lots of examples of how the black workers were treated less favourably, and at the time I think I was only 16, but at that time I was still enraged because it was just so blatant. And it was our first job and nobody knew what to do. And even if we, I guess, did know what to do because we knew it wasn't right, no one wanted to take that step. So I remember doing some research at the time. I think I was the first year when dial-up internet came. And I remember going home
on the British Encyclopedia stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. Doing research on the matter, and I wrote a letter in my sort of young 16-year-old vocab that I had at the time, basically saying what an injustice it was and it wasn't right that we were being treated in that way. And it changed. It stopped. It might not have changed perceptions and mindset, but definitely there was a shift in treatment, which was enough at the time. And then I realised that I had a gift for writing and researching, and I enjoyed doing that and fighting for the rights of others. So it kind of stemmed from there, and my African parents were very happy that they got that lawyer from one of the kids.
Lawyer, engineer or medic, you tick one of the boxes.
Yeah.
Jumping forward a little bit, you touched upon the limits potentially of law to not necessarily shift minds and perceptions. Has that been something you've encountered throughout your career, or actually you've seen the power of statutes and law to shift perceptions and mindsets?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I'd say both. It's almost easier to change the law than it is to change someone's perception, I would say, and it's not easy to change the law, is the point. I say that because I do feel in this job that many of my cases are the same. And that can be really, really difficult and soul-destroying and very, very frustrating to deal with, because I could be running 8 inquests, for example, at any given time, and 6 of them will be with a black man who died at the hands of the state in custody via restraint, for example. And that's difficult because whilst I might win the case at the end of the day for the family, in that I'd get them some compensation, which is never enough, even if it was all the money in the world, because somebody has died and they're not coming back. It's only a win in that moment until the next death happens, and that really is quite hard. For me, I would prefer to change the mindsets and the perception first, because I believe if we're able to do that, we can then impact real change. But I'm still working on that.
Yeah, and so are we with what we're doing on FEMHO with the COVID inquiry, the disproportionate impact of COVID on black and ethnic minority healthcare frontline workers.
Yeah.
You know, trying to find out and get justice for that situation, but then also trying to change minds and perceptions so that kind of thing doesn't happen again. But let's go back to you and your journey into law. So at 16, you've written a letter to your employers, you've changed the situation, and then you thought you were going to employment law, then kind of what changed?
Yes.
What shifted?
That's right. So I did that, and then I came back to my roots because it was quite strange. I was going to law school, and I was mixing with people from different backgrounds to me, and different economic statuses to me, because law is a very privileged profession to be in. But then you have to go back home, and you go back home to your surroundings.
And home being Peckham at this point?
Peckham,
yeah.
South East London.
Not East London, but...
Not East London,
we'll forgive you.
South East.
Yeah.
So yes, I've always lived in South East. It was Bermondsey to begin with, then Camberwell, and then Peckham, but it was Peckham at this point. And you see, the blue sirens everywhere. You see the stop and search. We know the statistics that black men are more likely to be stopped and searched than their white counterparts. We know the statistics that black men are more likely to die at the hands of the state than their white counterparts. We know all the statistics about exclusion and segregation in the education system. We know all of the statistics about housing and black people. So you go back to all of that, or I was going back to all of that, and I just think there still is, a lack of lawyers who are human rights focused, who are wanting to bring about positive change, societal change, and to bridge the gap of the disparity between the two worlds. So I went back to my roots of, actually, there are loads of fantastic employment lawyers out there doing great work, but who's dealing with this? And there are great lawyers dealing with this, but we need more,
Mm.
because it's exhausting.
Mm.
It's really, really exhausting fighting the state, but someone has to do it. So it was in coming back home and seeing it, because it was everywhere, that reminded me of my real, passion, where it lay. So that's when I went back.
Can we touch on that exhausting? Because if I can be real with you, on this year and a half, or almost 2 years that we've been working together on the COVID inquiry, I feel a little bit exhausted and the media gaze moves on, right? The infected blood scandal was there and it's not in the news anymore, but the inquiry, the inquest still goes on. Grenfell, similar, undercover police story. What's the mindset to be successful, quote unquote, in these spaces where, a great injustice has happened, but the media gaze has moved on, but you're still there working with the survivors, the victims, to still try and get justice?
Yeah. To be honest, I expect it now. I've been doing this for about 16 years, so I have witnessed firsthand the role that the media plays in any high-profile case, and it can make or break a case. Believe me, it really can. So for me, it's about managing my clients' expectations and working with the media where possible, and when safe to do so, in a way to get the most that they can out in terms of any campaign or any coverage or any messaging that they want to on their issue. But be mindful that, if it's not sexy enough, it's not going to hit mainstream. And that can be very hard for them, because their issue for them is everything.
It's real, and it's,
and they're living it.
Yeah.
So for me, it's about, my responsibility is to manage their expectations on the media, and they could be on your side today, but not on your side tomorrow. They could be interested on Monday, and it's, old news by Thursday. So we kind of have to use it as a tool, but be careful of it, and wary of it as well.
Yeah. Forgive my naivety, how much, if any, does lived experience come into what you do? So I gained some sense that was important at the beginning in terms of deciding to be a human rights focused lawyer. Does that continue? Does your background and where you've come from influence the cases you pick and that stuff?
I mean, it probably shouldn't, but I think the reality is it does. I think for me, it becomes personal, but not in a way that clouds my judgment and my professional duties. But when I see, a black mother, burying her son because he's died at the hands of the state, or when I see a black young man come in with bruises or fractures, and they say it's happened during a restraint and excessive force was used, that woman could be my mum, could be my aunt, and that young man could be my brother or my nephew. So it's difficult not to take it personal, also because I've seen it and I've around me, and that was indeed the reason why I got into law. So yeah, it does help shape the sort of cases that I take on, because for me, no case is too small. It's about, I don't only do high profile cases. I know that my CV might look that way. It's a very
illustrious CV.
Yeah, my CV might look that way, but actually I do still do, lower end cases, which some firms might see as, a commercial risk or a commercial loss, because they're not commercially viable, because the amount of money and time that you spend on it won't equate at the end of the day when you bill the file. Luckily, as a partner, I can take those commercial risks, and I can say, well, actually, I am going to take this case on because it's important, and I think it's winnable, even if it is for £5,000, and the apology is worth more than the £5,000, so I'm prepared to take the case on. So, yeah.
And can we talk a little bit now about being a partner? So there's kind of two angles I want to take here. First is, again, just forgive my naivety, and there's probably people that are watching this that may not know as well, but what is the sector like? What's the industry like for black female partners? I imagine if it's like most other sectors, is probably not representative and great. Has that improved, or is actually, you know, is it an issue as much?
I think it's getting better. I think we're definitely in an era of people wanting to be woke, and I think organisations are seeing the benefits of diversity at the top, right down, and you know, representation matters. I think they're slowly getting that now. During my journey to partner, so I started as a paralegal at a leading human rights firm, Bernberg Pearson Partners, and I worked my way up from there to caseworker, then trainee, and then solicitor. And then I left and I went to a boutique firm on Fleet Street around the corner, where I was deputy head of department there. And I left there and came to Saunders as head of inquiries, and within 2 years I made partner, which was very quick, if I do say so myself. But and I always remind people who I have this conversation with that when I got that first job as a paralegal at Bernberg's, I was given a chance by a black female lawyer who maybe saw something in me similar to her. And at the time I was fresh out of law school. I didn't have much legal experience, but she took a chance on me. And in fact, I applied for a legal secretary position because I just wanted to get my foot in the door. And I completely failed the typing test because I type like this. But she recognised that whilst I wasn't a secretary because I wasn't able to type quicker than this, the passion was there, and the grades were there, and the hard work ethic was there. So she took a chance on me, and but for her, and we're still in touch now, I probably wouldn't have got to this stage. So I think it's really important that organisations are changing, because representation, you know, you have to see it to believe it, that you can achieve it. I would never have said to you when I was that 16-year-old girl writing that letter to the employer that I would be a partner within 2 years of you know, applying. I would never have said that. So, yeah.
Yeah, and for the record, I want to share the representation at Saunders and the support from yourselves, and also Professor Leslie Thomas, KC, has been so encouraging and uplifting, and has allowed us to kind of keep going through even this uncertain kind of time of, just even trying to figure out what inquiry means, our position in responding to statements and submitting, you know, statements, etc. It's been amazing. Maybe as we round up now, interesting to have seen what was important for you at 16 then to kind of be where you are now. What would you say to young women, men watching this, thinking about a career in law?
Yeah. God, there's lots I could say. That's a separate discussion.
Top thing.
Okay.
Top thing.
There's loads. I'll try and be succinct. I think getting to law for the right reason is key. I think there's a perception that being a lawyer, you're going to be a millionaire within a year of working. And some maybe so, but you know, if your sole motivation is financial, then you need to select the right area of law so you can achieve that and then move on. You're certainly not going to be a millionaire after a year doing what I do, but that's a separate point. I would say think outside of the box in terms of how you seek your applications and how you approach your applications. I think too many people want to sound and look the same on paper as their peers, when actually, certainly when I'm recruiting, I'm looking for that difference. What makes you different from somebody else? That's what I'm looking for. Oh, she looks interesting, I'm going to give her a ring and meet her. And I think, finally, it's expensive to qualify. So I think make sure that you actually want to be a lawyer. before you embark on that road. That I know so many people who have gone to law school and for whatever reason haven't ended up becoming lawyers. And on one level, that's many years of studying and being broke, and money that could still be in their bank account if they had given it proper consideration. So I think that I'd say that.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you so much for your time. Probably one last question.
Sure.
Is I get the impression, because of your illustrious career and your experience and knowledge in the field, I mean, this kind of conversation is actually quite sought after, to understand your career to date, some of your thinking. And knowing you as I've done for a little while now, you're obviously an incredible legal mind, but I wouldn't say the most narcissistic, outgoing type person. Just interesting to unpack that a little bit. How do you just prefer sitting in the background a little bit, not being too vocal about your views, or that's just never been a part of your personality?
Yeah, I'm just not that way inclined, to be honest. And you know what? To be fair, I haven't had to be. I'm not one to sort of talk for talking's sake. In fact, it's a real pet peeve. I can't stand when we're in a meeting and it goes on for an hour when actually it could have been 15 minutes, but everybody wants to appear to be knowledgeable. We're all knowledgeable, which is why we're around the table. I like to speak when I've got something to add value. If someone's already said it, I don't need to repeat it. And I think it's a quality that I have that's probably helped me navigate the profession. Nobody likes a know-it-all. Nobody likes somebody who likes the sound of their own voice. So if you've got somebody who can add value at the right time, through critical thinking or through checking a document for typos, or allowing other people to feel important even though you could have said it or you already knew it, I think that definitely helps. So that's probably another top tip as well. Don't talk just for sake of talking, because it wastes time and it can, rub up people.
Yeah, people who know can see that maybe you're just
100%.
There is actually one other question I just want to squeeze
in. Keep going. I'm warming up now. We could go for a long time. I'm warming up now.
So you're interested to unpack your relationship with the state.
Sure.
So as someone who supports people in vulnerable positions when they've experienced the wrong end of engagement with the state.
Yeah.
As a private citizen, I can't think of the right way to phrase this, but I suppose you still believe in the state, believe in the good of the state, and there is just bad examples, or do you think there are institutional problems that need, wholesale change?
Both.
Both.
For sure. There are good eggs and there are rotten eggs, and sadly, in my profession, I come across the rotten eggs because that's the nature of my job. But I'm not anti-government. I'm not anti, authority at all. If anything was to happen to me or my family, I'd be calling 999 immediately. But I think there are many systemic problems within various arms of the state that need to be looked at, and I think part of the problem is a perception of the state's complicit nature and willingness to sweep those bad habits and cultures and rotten eggs under the carpet, rather than addressing the issue head on. And I think once that happens, I'll be out of a job, and quite frankly I'd be happy to be out of a job, because I think society would be better for it once those issues are dealt with. Unfortunately,
I don't think you will be for some time.
Yeah, me neither.
I think you'll be a partner helping the most vulnerable people in our society deal with challenging situations. And if the trajectory of your career is to go by so far, I imagine you're going to be doing even more and amazing things for people, as well as the small cases which you allude to. So I think we'll end it there, and on behalf of the Federation of Ethnic Minority Healthcare Organisations, who have benefited from your legal counsel and your leadership of the legal counsel with Professor Leslie Thomas, KC, just thank you so much for everything you've done so far.
It's been
and
a privilege.
Thank you on behalf of the other, hundreds of millions of ethnic minority nurses and doctors that are going to benefit from hopefully the changes that we enact through the inquiry, the kind of injustices the truths we help tell, etc., etc. Thank you, Cyrilia.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll leave it there for now.
Thank you.